FM.
So on the other side of my screen is a guy called Chris Overend. He's the technical instructor and is now teaching photography at Solent University. Just left a couple of weeks ago. Thank you for coming along, Chris.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
We should just quick explain, you were the first Solent Sport News guest we had on.
I was indeed.
Those that coming full circle now, and you were on there talking about your success last year, which we'll get onto a bit later on. But you were being questioned by a car, weren't you, on the course?
That's right.
Yeah, if memory serves me correctly. And so going back into sort of growing up stages, did you do any sports growing up?
What, when I was growing up? So, I mean, I had surgery when I was a baby on my hips. So I was left in a cast for about 14 months. And as far as we knew, the surgery went okay. I was bimbling around like a normal toddler would. I think one of my early memories is that in our house we had lots of models of prosthetic hips, like really, really tiny little prosthetic hips that I assume is something that they talked about doing when I was a baby. And one of my early memories is being dragged to doctors and basically getting really pissed off with being prodded and going, I'm fine, just let me go, I don't want to be here anymore. I think when I was an early teenager, I can retrospectively look back and go, there were some warning signs as to what was going on with me, because I kept falling over and breaking bones. And I had a 3-year spell where I broke one or both of my wrists every year for 3 years solid. And yeah, my mum was not best pleased with me, because the school would get a phone call and say, he's done it again. And yeah, I kept falling over, I kept breaking things. I used to get out of bed in the night because I couldn't sleep, because I wasn't comfortable. My parents decided that I was falling out of bed, so they put a railing up because they thought I was falling out of bed, and I kept saying to them, I'm not falling out of bed, I just can't get comfortable. And I was always a fidget ass as well. When I was younger, I could never sit still, I could never cross my legs. I could never sit the way my friends sit. And there were lots of things that I couldn't do that they could do that I just thought I couldn't do, because I guess I don't know, I thought it was a skill thing and I just lacked the skill to be able to do it. So yeah, but apart from that, a relatively normal childhood in inverted commas.
And was it about 15 years old that 12 even played, 24 years old, you were out skiing, and then you had some sort of back spasm when you untie on your boots.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Yeah, that's exactly right. So my godparents have been trying to get me to go skiing with them ever since I was a youngster, but my mum and dad wouldn't let me because they were pretty good skiers. They would go and do extreme things, and because I'd had such an accident-prone childhood, my mum was always scared that I was going to hurt myself in a big way that would mean I wouldn't get back up again. So naturally, when the opportunity came to go skiing with them, I was like, I'm going skiing, I don't care, because they were good fun. And yeah, you're right, I spent 3 or 4 days on the holiday. It was really great. I had a massage. I'd never had a massage before in my life. I'd already had a bad back, and it was a full body massage, Peter. So got right in there and made my back all super jelly like. And then it was the morning after, and all we did was we went up a chairlift, skied on a gentle slope to another chairlift, up a chairlift, gentle slope to another chairlift, and then down a chairlift, because I didn't fancy skiing down what's called the wall into Switzerland, and then a very short run from the ski from the cable, the chairlift, to where we were going to have some lunch before we started skiing for the day. And that's exactly what happened. We got to the the restaurant. I bent over to undo my ski boot, and something popped in my back, and it was awful. I was like practically paralyzed for a couple of hours. Couldn't move, couldn't do anything. It was agony. And that was the last day I ever skied. I never skied again in my life. And I was what, 20? I was 23 or 24. I can't remember. It was one of those ages. And then coming back to London, that was the beginning of finding out about what had been going on. I saw a chiropractor for a long time, who then, told me to go and see a surgeon. And I won't tell you the whole boring story, unless you want to hear it, of course.
Well, let's hear it. Why not?
Okay. Well, I came back and saw a chiropractor in London. She basically tried to reset my back, and she was doing it like every couple of weeks, and each session was about £150. And after about 2 or 3 months of it, she kind of like, one of the tests she did with me, Peter, was she stood me up and she put a blindfold over me, and she basically got me to just stand there, and every time I stood there, I fell over. She had to catch me, and she was like, all sorts of those sort of noises were going on. Yes. Yeah, all of that. And
blindfold, did you must have thought, what's going on here?
Yeah, I've got blindfold on, and all I can hear is interesting. Yes. So she, after a while, said, look, I really want you to go and see an orthopedic surgeon. I've got a bit of a deformed back. I've got a bit of a deformed pelvis, so my pelvis sticks out on my left side, which I thought was just fat growing up. I never used to take my t-shirt off in front of people or girls because I thought my body was really ugly. And she said, yeah, go and see a surgeon. So I did. So Dad and I went to Epsom Hospital. We got referred to the Elective Orthopaedic Centre in Epsom, and they did a whole load of scans and x-rays on me. And then they gave me the prognosis, and basically said, your hips are a ticking time bomb, Chris. He said, you need to make some major life changes right now. You need to stop doing sports altogether. You need to not run ever again, no jumping, no climbing ladders. He said, you're in a very precarious position at the moment. And yeah, deal with it, basically. And this was I was 23. And it was a bit of a bombshell to deal with at the time. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really do any of that. I just kind of carried on as normal. I just thought, you're just making it up. You're just making it seem more extreme than it is. And then, no word of a lie, 6 months later, I was walking to work. It's such a strange thing to think that at a time in my life I used to just walk without a walking aid or a wheelchair. I just used to just walk places. And I basically, I think I took sometimes if you have a misstep and I stood on a curb. I mean, I know you use wheelchair, Peter, but I stood on a curb and it just sort of jarred me a little bit, and my left hip, I felt pop out the socket. And normally, if you have a hip dislocation, it's a very severe thing because most people's hips are well wedged into the sockets, but not me. My hips sockets are really shallow. So for me, it was a painful experience, but it wasn't like a bone breaking pain experience. And I basically pushed my hip back into the socket in the street, and then stood there on the spot for about 20 minutes, kind of petrified to, put my leg down again. And, I was due to be in central London on a shoot with a photographer, and we were shooting Gordon Ramsay, and I was mortified. So I had to phone up the photographer and say, look, this has just happened. I'm really sorry. She was great. Suki, the photographer I was working for, she was like, don't worry, I'll find someone else to cover you. Get better. So yeah, that started like the chain of events that kind of changed my life forever after that, because I told the doctor told the surgeon then, I think I can't remember if he phoned me or I went in for a very quick appointment, but he kind of said, look, I was hoping that wouldn't happen for a little while longer, but we need to do something immediately before this gets considerably worse. So they said, we want you to undertake quite an extreme surgery, and they were like, there's a lot of risks with the surgery, and there's probably a 6 month to a year recovery. And I was like, okay, fine. I was a pretty headstrong guy back then. I'd been in hospital so many times already that I was like, it's just another operation. I'll get knocked out, I'll wake up, I'll be a bit sore, and then maybe I'll go back to being me again. But what they did was so that's my hip, that's my left hip. So my right hip is kind of that size, so too big for the socket, and my left hip is like a stump. And what had happened is my hip had done that as I'd gone through puberty. So what the surgery was they severed the top of the femur and then rotated the top part of the head back into what's left of my very shallow sockets. So normal sockets like that, my sockets are like that. And yeah, went in, big pen marker on my left leg, make sure we cut this one open. Woke up in an orthopedic wing surrounded by pensioners, and everyone going, oh, you're so young, Chris. You're so young to be in here. And I'm like, oh, if anyone tells me that I'm so young to be in here, I'm just going to scream. And, I woke up and basically my whole left thigh was one big, I've got 3 huge scars and, massive load of bruising. And they gave me a spinal epidural. So I was basically couldn't feel anything from my heart downwards. And that was a strange experience coming out of that, because I had no bladder function. So I couldn't go to the bathroom for about a week and a half. So I had to be catheterized, which was deeply unpleasant. And I ended up getting a bladder infection. And just the whole thing was just really, not a great experience. But I left hospital after a couple of weeks, and they moved me to a bed at home. And then, I was given some instructions for physiotherapy, and a load of morphine, basically. And then, honestly, the first couple of months, really uneventful. Doing my exercises, laying in bed, and just, to a degree, kind of enjoying it. Like, I've been working my ass off for school and working for like years and years and years, and suddenly I had like a month off in bed. All right, I was completely dosed up to the eyeballs on morphine, so I couldn't really feel anything. But it was okay the first couple of months. And eventually I had some friends come around and visit me, and they got me out of bed, which I hadn't really done much for the first couple of months. And we went to go in the garden, and we went into the garden, and we came back inside. And when we came back inside, I made a decision that's another one that changed my life forever, because I needed to take my I needed to take my shoes off, Peter, because we've been outside and I didn't want to tread mud everywhere. So instead of sitting down, so bear in mind I couldn't weight bear at all on my left leg, so I was literally doing all of my right leg. Instead of sitting down and taking my shoes off, I stood there on my crutches while my friends took my shoes off. Now, they took my left shoe off, no problem whatsoever. But when they went to take my right shoe off, they just caught my toe as they were lifting it off. And suddenly I had to put all of my weight through my left leg, which of course just fell like a house of cards. And I twisted my knee, and I fell to the floor, and it was pretty painful. So I went back upstairs, bear in mind that was quite an operation getting me up the stairs, because it was like crutch, move, crutch, move. And I kind of stayed up there for a couple of weeks. I didn't really come down at all, other than maybe to go to the bathroom every now and then. I really didn't move much. And the pain was really severe at this point. The pain of the surgery was really severe. The pain in my knee was severe. My whole leg was like permanently cramped. And it was agony. Like if I moved even a slight bit, it was like, number 10 pain. If you've ever been to hospital and the doctor's asked you, like, tell me your pain scale from 1 to 10, and 10 being the most painful thing in the world, I was at 10, like night and day for months, Peter, like literally months and months. And it was mentally really exhausting. I couldn't sleep because every time I moved, I woke up from the pain. And it took a really long time for the surgeons to go, something's not right, because 6 months down the line, I was still in exactly the same position, absolute agony, couldn't weight bear. And I was in trouble at that point. I was really in trouble. My left leg was about as skinny as, well, it's probably skinnier than my arm is now, actually, and it had become completely limp. So I had zero function. So if I wanted to move it, I had to literally lift my leg, and I was solely reliant on the right leg that I had left. They eventually kind of went, well, look, the surgery was not successful because your bones haven't joined together, so we're going to book you in for another surgery. So I had to wait another 4 months for that. So that's kind of about 10 months from the original surgery date. They also discovered that I'd torn my ACL in my knee. So, the really big ligament through your knee. I'd completely severed it. So they said that's why I couldn't weight bear on the leg, was because I couldn't put any pressure through the knee. And then because I couldn't put any pressure through the knee, I couldn't force the bones together so that they would knit and sort of heal. So I went in for the surgery. I woke up, felt really faint. I've never felt so faint after that surgery. And the surgeon said, we're really sorry, something went wrong in the surgery. We weren't able to do your knee. So we've done the osteotomy on your hip again. But when we went to pull out the metal rod in your leg, we discovered that the hole was bigger and we needed a bigger tool to ream out, whatever bone marrow was left on the inside. Otherwise, the post wouldn't sit. So apparently, Peter, I was on an operating theatre, all open, while they sent a taxi from a different hospital in London to bring a tool over. For about an hour, I was sat there open. And when they sewed me back up, they said, we're really sorry we didn't do your knee. So I then had to wait another 4 months, or 3 or 4 months, for my knee surgery. So it was almost 18 months basically from that original surgery date to having the knee surgery and the second surgery to fix the leg again. Now, what I didn't tell you is in between that first surgery and then the second one, they tried all sorts of things. So I had a bone splinter sticking out of one of my legs. So they took out the screws that were at the bottom of the leg above the knee, thinking that that's why I was having problems with my knee, not realizing I'd torn my ACL. Because that was the problem, Peter, because I was on morphine and I was already in a lot of pain. I couldn't really differentiate what was what. It was just, all rubbish. It was a rubbish time. I lost about 3 or 4 stone body weight from it. So I'm like 12 and a half, 13. I'm probably 13 stone now. And I was probably about 9 stone at some points. So I was very, very, very skinny. I looked close to death, to be honest with you. And I was close to death because I lost everything. I lost my career. I couldn't walk. I just couldn't do anything. I was really in a bad way. But yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And so when you was in the guys about photo shoot with Gordon Ramsay, didn't Gordon just pick up the phone and go, get down out of your fucking fat and photo me?
No. What's for? Do you know what? I've worked with Gordon Ramsay before. He was a lovely guy. He was genuinely a really lovely guy. So it didn't matter. It didn't matter at all.
So, going forwards from that then, so was it always your dream job to be a photographer from the start?
No, I wanted to be a film director, Peter. I wanted to be Steven Spielberg. I wanted to be Steven Spielberg. There you go. That was who I wanted to be. I wanted to enlighten people's lives with storytelling through video, basically. Because a lot of films, there's stuff that you watch, but there are some films that have a real positive impact on your outlook on life, and I definitely felt a really strong emotional connection with some films that I watched growing up that kind of shaped my ideals and how I think about things. And I wanted to do that because I thought that that's a really cool thing to be able to do. So I didn't want to just make movies. I wanted to make movies that mattered. So I spoke to some people, I got some advice, and they all said to me, if you want to do that, you need to learn photography first so that you understand how cameras work. So I was looking at different degrees that I could do in movie making, etc., etc. And to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't do very well in my photography A levels, so I couldn't get into any degrees that I wanted to. So I went and did a foundation in art and design straight after school, specialised in photography, and then I went and did an HND at Salisbury College in photography, which was a really good course, had a really good reputation for technical skills. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I just really enjoyed it. I picked up work as an assistant before I even started college, and I was doing film loading at London Fashion Week, and I'd already started working in London professionally. And yeah, like in the 2 years I was at college, I was going and doing assisting jobs up in London, and it was such a cool industry, like really lovely people, really creative, really challenging industry as well, because there was problem solving. Every single job there was a different problem to solve, and I really enjoyed that element of it. And then I just started to get into the techie side of it, really, like different cameras, different lenses, different lighting. I loved it. I really loved it right from the start, and I really liked the human connection that I could find with people, because psychology is such a big thing when you're photographing someone, that I thought I want to be the next portrait photographer, the person that can go and photograph the unphotographable people, the celebrities that hate having their picture taken, or the politicians that never open up to people. I want to be that person that goes and breaks down those barriers and gets that picture of someone of who they are and not who they present to be. So I find that all really interesting. Yeah, that was why. That's how I ended up doing photography. I just fell into it.
And how did you get into coming to Solent?
So it's a sort of long story, but it's not. But so when I was completely incapacitated, I saw an advert for a staff photographer at a car magazine called Evo, and I still had a broken femur. I was still on a lot of morphine. I was still 2 crutches or wheelchair. That was it, basically. And I got a job interview, Peter. I got a job interview. I was like, oh my God. Like, I thought my whole life and career was over, and I've got a job interview at a magazine I've been reading since I was 18 years old. This is huge. So they were like, we're going to want to see a portfolio of car photography. And I was like, I've never done car photography before. I better go and do some car photos. So my mates that had been around for me in those couple of years, who really checked up on me all the time and visited me, got me out of the house when they could. Well, one of their dads had a Porsche, had a nice new Porsche, So I said to him, can we photograph your Porsche at some point? And they went, yes, yeah, we could do that. How are we going to do that though? Because like, how are you going to photograph out the back of a car? Like, you can't even hold on. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's a good point. Don't worry, we'll think of something. So do you know what the something was? We got into a Range Rover. We opened up the boot. We then lifted me up. We put me in the boot of the car. We then cable tied me to the car. No word of a lie. We actually cable tied me into the boot of the car. We then lowered the tripod in over my lap, cable tied the tripod in. Then we put the camera on and we worked out our composition on the driveway for where the car would be in relation to the camera. And I had a Hasselblad that had a viewfinder that you look down. And we went and did that. So I had a radio. They drove off, and I'm just like in the back of this car with every bump kind of going. Oh. It was agony. But we got some really stunning shots of my mate's Porsche. But basically, I just thought I didn't get the job, by the way. I went into the job interview. I left my left crutch in the car. Yeah. I swallowed a load of codeine, and I went in there basically pretending that my impairment was not as bad as it was. I went in there to try and underplay it a little bit because I thought, they're going to discriminate me here. They're going to look at me and they're going to go, yes, you've got the skills to be able to do the job. You've got the knowledge, but you're not going to have the physical ability to do it. And that was a wrong thing for me to do. I should have been upfront with them and just said to them, this is what I'm going through. I'd like to make this work. Are you willing to make this work? That's something that I'm not proud of, because I should have just gone in there as me. So I didn't get the job, but I did have a job interview, and it was really cool. I got to meet the editor of Evo magazine, had a chat with him. But I then went through a bit of a depression cycle because I thought, what am I going to do with myself? And a friend of mine worked at Solent University. So he was a photographer that I met in New York. And he was visiting me one evening, and he said, have you ever thought about education? And I was like, no, no. Why would I want to be an educator? Like, who would listen to me? Seriously. And I thought about it for a week or so, and then I kind of looked at what the job was, and I looked at my current position and just thought, well, what am I going to do with my life? I can't spend the rest of my life in bed. I can't spend the rest of my life feeling sorry for myself. I've got to go and I need to go and at least try, because if I don't try, I'll never know. And it was the best decision I've made in my life, Peter, because I applied for the job. I got a job interview. And
did you go into the interview and be yourself this time?
I was 100% myself. I told the university everything about my impairment. I told them that I might be using a wheelchair. I told them that I might be on crutches, and they were so accommodating, Peter. They really were. Like, right from the word go, they said, look, if you need extra time for sickness, we're going to put that on your, on your, what do you call it, on your job profile, whatever it is. If you need a teaching aid, if you need an assistant, we'll organise that for you. They were very caring about like making sure my working environment was accessible for me. It was actually like a really lovely experience, and and I got the job, and I still couldn't believe I got the job. It was like, wow, my life just changed instantly. I've gone from having no life for the last 2 years, and then before that being a struggling freelancer with barely able to make rent, to suddenly, wow, I've actually got a good job. I've actually got a good job doing something that I love to do. And I was what, 26, 27 when I started. So like it was, I think it was when it was 25 when I had the surgery. So 2007, I think it was. Then I had the 2 years where I didn't do really anything. And then I started working here when I was 27. And I've been here 14 years now, which is crazy. And then I've had, what have I had? I've had, so I've had 2 other surgeries on my hips. another surgery on my right hip, and then I had a procedure done on my hip about 2 months ago. And actually, the very last major surgery I had left me with some nerve damage in my left leg, so I've got partial feeling on the front left side of my leg, which is a bit odd. Just feels like I've got, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's just a lack of feeling on the front left of my leg.
And is that it now, or have you got more surgeries left?
Well, I'm at an interesting point in my life, Peter, because they gave me some steroid injections a couple of months ago to try, which I've had several times before that didn't really do anything. So what they've said this time is we're going to do steroid injections in both your hips, and if you get some relief, or if you're able to use your legs more, we're going to see how long that lasts for. And if it's under 6 months, they said we're going to consider the operation a failure. So they said if you get more than 6 months of relief and you're able to do more, we'll call it a success. And what we'll do is we're just going to keep injecting you until there's nothing left of your hips, basically, because that's what the injections do. They literally eat away at your hips, so you can't have them done too many times. But I don't know. I think I'd say I've probably definitely had a slight uptick in my mobility since I've had those injections, especially in my right hip. My left hip, completely unchanged, just still really, really bad. I still get the odd moment where I have to just stop or sit down. And yeah, it is what it is. So the current plan is I will likely have a total hip replacement on both hips in the next couple of years, and they'll probably make my left leg a couple of inches longer, I think. But the surgeons have said, it's not a guaranteed fix. They said, you've got to be prepared for the fact that you might go through the surgery and it might not work. And once I go through the surgery, there's no going back, because obviously they chop what I have left of my body. So my original surgeon, right from the start, said, try and delay that for as long as possible. Try to manage things as well as you can. And that was when I moved to Southampton for my orthopedic surgeon. My orthopedic surgeon got talking to about a wheelchair, basically, and said, use it sparingly, don't overuse it. He was really strong to me to not overuse it, because bear in mind, Peter, I've been through dystrophy or atrophy, sorry, where you lose all the muscle mass in your body, and it happens really, really fast. So like if I ever use my wheelchair, I try not to do multiple days in a row in it, because it's suddenly very hard to get out of it just after even a couple of days. So for me, it's like it's a real privilege to be able to use it like that, rather than having no choice but to be able to use it. So I'm really aware of the privilege I've got at the moment, but I'm also happy to have that control back in my life now, where I can manage my symptoms really well. And I'd say for the last probably 5 or 6 years have been the most stable I've had in my life for a long time. It's a nice place to be.
Brilliant. And so you went to London Fashion Week. You did all the photography out there. I've actually been there once, just looking around. It's quite nice, actually, the whole event. And so, what other celebrities did you take photos of? Gordon Ramsay, any others? And then name drops you can give?
Oh God. I didn't. I mean, I photographed a few people, I suppose, but I helped other people photograph people. So we photographed Rihanna. We photographed Ian McKellen, seeing Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. We photographed some Hollywood actors that are probably before your time. How old are you, Peter?
You're not that old, surely.
I'm 41, mate.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember Dawson's Creek?
I remember hearing the show, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, there you go. So I've met a couple of the cast members of that. We photographed them.
Okay.
I went to Belfast and we photographed Tom Hardy for a horror movie he was filming out there, and Selma Blair and some other actors, Stellan Skarsgård, that sort of thing. We photographed a lot of celebrity chefs. That was quite a cool time to do. Was working for the Observer Food Monthly, so we photographed a lot of the chefs that you see on these TV programs nowadays. I think I'd say probably the coolest person that we've met. I spent 2 days with Anthony Bourdain. So Anthony Bourdain is a chef. He sadly died a couple of years ago, and he's written loads of books. He's been featured in movies. He's just a really lovely, cool guy and a bloody good cook. But he's probably the person that I look back and go, wow, that was actually really special to spend time with him, because he was a pretty special guy.
And people are starting to sort of wonder at this point where sport comes in, because obviously this is a sport podcast.
Yeah.
So people are going to go, what's the photography? Where's the sport? So when mobility came in and you ended up having, was it a manual wheelchair? And you don't use it as much, but you do use a manual chair, don't you?
Yeah, I've got a manual chair.
Yeah, and so before I get into your racing, which is your main sport now, was it that, or was it getting into tennis first of all?
Well, I mean, I wished I'd started tennis 8 or 9 years earlier than I did. I really wished I had done. I started it when I was about 35, 36. Wheelchair tennis was on at Wimbledon, and I watched it and I was like, this is awesome, but like, how the hell did you get into it? So I went back that off. Well, I sat in my office that afternoon and did a bit of research on it, and I found out that there was the people that run it in the UK was called the Tennis Foundation. So I got in touch with the Tennis Foundation and sort of said, am I eligible to do this? Like, can I come and do this? Like, how do I do this? Do I need to buy a chair? Like, how do we do this? And they sent me some details of an event in Portsmouth, which was basically a try, like a taster day for people to come and try wheelchair tennis. And Rob Bell? No, Rob, I can't remember his name now. That's terrible. A guy called Rob was there, who was the Team GB development squad manager for wheelchair tennis. And he was there with a pro wheelchair tennis player called Steve Crompton. And they basically plonked me in a wheelchair, gave me a tennis racket, and just sent me off, basically. And I was like, well, this is kind of novel, because I would hit the ball and then I would just sit there. And then Steve would hit the ball back and I'd just watch it just fly past me. And Rob and Steve would be like, no, you need to keep moving, Chris. You need to keep moving. Otherwise, the ball's not going to come to you. And I really enjoyed it. And at the end of the session, Steve let me sit in his chair, which was a Grand Slam, really expensive chair that was the right size for me. And I got in the chair and I threw the ball up and I served it and I did the most beautiful ace. And then I did it again and I did another beautiful ace. And I hit about 4 serves, and I'd never served before in a wheelchair before. And they all went in. They all went straight down the line. And it was such a magic feeling because I'd not played tennis in 10, 12 years. And it was one of the sports that I loved playing, was tennis. And it put such a smile on my face to be able to hit a ball again. It really did. So from that conversation, or from that experience, they contacted me the following Monday and said, do you want to do this more? How would you be interested in competing in wheelchair tennis? And I was like, I don't even own a wheelchair or a tennis wheelchair. Like, what do you mean? And they said, well, look, here's what you do. Here's how you get a tennis wheelchair. So I had to find some money to get the tennis wheelchair, and then they gave me some dates to come up to Loughborough University to go and join a lot of other, disabled athletes and wheelchair tennis athletes. And I felt like such an imposter there, Peter, because all of the people were wearing like county shirts and Team GB shirts, and I was just me. I was just literally wearing a plain t-shirt, and everyone was looking at me like, "Who the hell are you?" And the only person that I really got on well that day with was a guy called Ben Sneesby, who's a downhill skier in Team GB for Paralympics, but he also does tennis. And he'd forgotten to bring lunch that day, so I gave him one of the sandwiches I bought, and we sat there and we chatted for ages, and we went out, and yeah, it was okay. But for the whole of that year, I spent, I think, the first couple of months in a borrowed chair that was really small. Then I finally got my chair that had been made to measure, and it was like night and day difference. And I lost every single match I played in. Every single match I lost in, and I came home every single weekend from the tournaments with like this bleeding, this bleeding, this finger bleeding, this finger bleeding, and I literally looked like I'd been in a knife fight basically. But I persisted, I kept persisting, and I think towards the end of the season I started to get a bit better, and I started to win a few games. Didn't really win matches, but I did win a few games. And then that was that. And then something really lovely happened at the end of that season. I got a phone call from someone from Portsmouth Tennis Centre, and it was a woman, and she said, "I know you do wheelchair tennis, Chris, but would you be interested in having a hit with my son?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, of course. I don't really know anyone to play tennis with at the moment, so let's do it." And I met this young lad, and he'd only recently got into a chair. He'd had surgery not go well, and he woke up with no memory of anything, no memory of how to walk, no memory of how to talk, who he was. And the doctors suggested that they try wheelchair tennis because maybe he had the muscle memory for it. And we then played tennis with each other probably once or twice a week over the whole of winter. So from like September all the way through till the start of the season in like February, March. And I got to know him. And he started to open up week by week. We started to talk more and more, and his natural ability to hit the ball started to come in. And it was a bit unusual at first because he was non-vocal. He wouldn't talk at all. So he would talk through his mum. So he would talk to his mum, and then his mum would talk to me. And then eventually, like one day, he wheeled himself towards the net and he started whispering to me. And then the whisper became a sort of slow talk. Then the slow talk became more of a talk. And it was, Peter, it was a real privilege to be part of that process that he went through, and watching him. It's hard to say. It's not. I couldn't say that he was recovering, but he was recovering. And we had some brilliant games of tennis over the winter period, to the point where we then carried on practicing through the start of the next season. And I think we got to August, and he came, and it was my doubles partner in a tournament, and we didn't get through to the final, but he, in the singles boys matches, actually managed to get through to the final. So he came home with loads of medals around his neck, and that was a real cool feeling. And he didn't really understand what was going on when they were doing the medal ceremony. He was like, he was so confused by it all. But let me tell you now, Peter, he is now in the top 5 in the UK for boys wheelchair tennis players, and he's literally on the doorstep of the top wheelchair tennis players in the country now. So he's not quite there yet, but give him a couple of years, he'll be chasing down Alfie Hewitt, Gordon Reed, all of those guys. It was such a magic thing to be a part of that. And later in that year, we went to the national finals, and I finally started winning some matches that year. I think every doubles tournament I played in, I won. I never won a singles title, which is always a shame, but we got to the national finals in Shrewsbury, and we beat some really good players. And I didn't partner with Andrew because Andrew was a junior then, so he couldn't play with me. And I managed to get to the final with my partner, and we won the final. and I got to go home and plonk an actual sporting trophy on my parents' desk, and it was a very proud moment. I'm still really proud of that. That was such a good achievement. And then, to be honest with you, I spent the winter training again. I trained with the young guy, and we got better and better and better. And then we started our new season in March, and we got to the final. We were both playing so well, like we really had trained well. And then 2 weeks later, lockdown happened.
So this was
COVID
like
COVID laid waste to all of it, Peter. They cancelled all of our tournaments. We weren't allowed to practice anywhere, and the tournaments didn't really restart for nearly 2 years. He had a special dispensation from Team GB to be able to train about 9 or 10 months after lockdown because of his status.
You get a elite exemption.
That's it. That's exactly it. And I was allowed to go and train with him. So it was under very strict conditions. We had to be outside. We did all of the COVID stuff, so we weren't anywhere near each other. We didn't touch each other, didn't touch balls. It's what it is. But I didn't play for 6 months, and suddenly I went out training with him, and I felt so out of shape. And we practiced and practiced and practiced, and it was really upsetting because I went from being in the shape of my life to being really out of shape within like 10 months or something, or wherever it was. And I think that a lot of that was to do with COVID. I think a lot of it was to do with being stuck at home. I never got COVID, but I just never quite got that fitness back. So I haven't actually entered. I've entered one tournament since after lockdown, and I really struggled with it. I got to a final. I came back with a medal, but it suddenly wasn't as enjoyable as I remembered. And it took a lot of the joy out for me, which is a bit sad.
And then you stopped?
No, I started racing. There was an overlap, Peter. There was a real overlap there.
Yeah, there's an overlap. So tennis sort of went into the background, and then racing came in.
Well, so I was still training. I was still doing wheelchair tennis, and when I was stuck at home, I really wanted to have a go at sim racing again. And I bought a steering wheel, and I wanted to see, can it be adapted? So can you put hand controls on a simulator? So I started looking around on the internet, and I found a picture of my steering wheel on Team Brit's website saying, we can make hand controls for sim racing. And I was like, sign me up. So I phoned them up and said, I've noticed that you've got this, and this. Can I see if you can modify my wheel? And they said, yeah, sure. I found out they were only about an hour's drive from me. And when we were allowed out during lockdown, we were finally allowed to go and do things. That was the first place I went. And they basically showed me the hand controls that they'd made for sim racing, showed me the hand controls they had in the race cars. And I couldn't get off their rig when I was there. It was amazing. And Al, who's the lead engineer of the team, gave me a big long laundry list of things that I needed to buy to be able to do it. And I'd already spent quite a lot of money already. So in all honesty, I put it in the back of my mind. This was like August time. I think it was August. And I was starting to teach again in the following month. So the sim basically got a cover put over it, and it gathered dust for months and months and months. And that was the second lockdown. Do you remember that second lockdown? So I was teaching lessons like this. And it was a really hard winter. That was particularly hard. The first lockdown was nice. The second lockdown sucked majorly. I think everyone agrees on that.
I'm pretty sure everyone does. But the third one,
third lockdown. Oh my god. So I was designated a key worker. So I had to come into the university. I kept the facilities open, had to work out all of the PPE and how we would function during COVID times, which was very stressful, but somewhat peaceful because there was only a couple of us in the office every day, and it was quite nice driving to work on empty roads. And there were parts of it that weren't bad at all. So
Did you end up just racing down the road on the mod?
No. I didn't actually. I really calmed down my driving. No. As tempting as it was, I never did that. So I got an email through from Team Brett saying we're starting up our race academy. Here's the dates. Here's how much it costs. Do you want to come and experience our hand controls on a real race car on a real racetrack? And I begged my wife. I was like, I've had such a hard winter. Can you please let me spend? Can I please spend money on a track day? And she caved and said yes. And that was then just the catalyst for some wild times, because I booked the day, and then the same day I got a phone call from the team boss of Team Brett, Dave, saying to me, "Do you want to do this for real?" And I was like, I was just coming to do a driving experience, but you're asking me if I want to be a racing driver. Yes, I've always wanted to be a racing driver. I want to be a racing driver since I was 10 years old. But I don't come from a wealthy family, Dave. It's a wealthy man's game. I can't afford to go racing. So what's the crack? And he explained it to me and said, we'll subsidize your racing. You need to find sponsorship to find the other half. But let's get you through your ARDS test and see, first off, if you've got what it takes. So for the next couple of months, I did a series of tests in the car at different tracks to see whether I had, whether they thought I had the potential to be able to do it, basically. And that summer went really quickly. I did my ARDS test, which is the race license test that you have to do at the end of the summer in August, and then I did my first race for the team in October, and it was such a wild ride, Peter. Just going from dreaming about doing something like this to actually doing it within 6 months was just incredible. And the hand controls that the team have developed are really, really good. Very intuitive, very easy to use, very powerful. I was mega impressed.
And so 2020, end of 2021, you got, was it a medal or did you win an individual at the end of 2021?
So end of 2021. So end of 2021, we did our first race at Donington. We came third in that first race. So ended up with a trophy in our first race, which was wild. And we nearly came second in our second race in that weekend, but we got really unlucky with the safety car. And to be honest, we finished second. I don't care what the official result was. Four or five cars overtook my teammate under safety car conditions, which if you read the official rules, it says that you're not allowed to overtake until you get past the control line, which at Donington is next to the start finish line, and they all drove past him. And the official word from the stewards was the car in front of my teammate Luke was driving slowly, therefore it is unreasonable to expect people to wait behind him. So Luke should have drove past him, but I've watched the onboard. He was not driving that slowly, Peter. There were cars in front of him, so we got robbed. Anyway, that was, yeah.
And then 2022 last year, you came onto the program, and you very recently during that time got the championships. This was with a teammate of yours. It was a pair.
Yeah, it was a pairing.
Yeah.
So I paired up with a guy called James Whitley. So James Whitley is a Team GB Paralympic downhill skier. So James was born without hands, and he's had multiple surgeries to basically give him limbs. So he's got limited digits in each hand, but it doesn't stop him from being able to drive very, very fast. And he's a really nice guy to boot as well. Good teammate. Really like James a lot. Got a lot of time for him. And we drove in a modified BMW M240 last year. And James missed the first round because he was in Beijing doing the Winter Paralympics. And yeah, he hit the ground running. We won both. I think we won both races in his first weekend with us. And we just had a dream season, Peter. Like, we picked up so many podiums, so many wins, so many fastest laps. But it was still very tight. Like, we had some races where we got unlucky and fell right back, but still managed to finish third in the points. But in the end, I think it came down to the last race. So the second to last race, all we needed to do was finish the race. We just needed to finish it, and we would have won the championship. And James managed to win that race. So by virtue, we won. So when we went into the very, very last race of the season, or the last round, you know, the pressure was completely off. We could just have fun, basically, because we'd already won by that point. But if we'd not, that last race would have been it, because I think we only won by about 6 points or something. Very cool experience. Very, very cool.
Was that your first time in a pairs in racing?
Yeah, I mean, when I did my first race in the season before in October, that was sharing the car with another driver. So the races that we do in Britcar are 50 minutes long. So we each get about 25 minutes of seat time in the car. And this season in Britcar, the races have been 2 hours and 3 hours long. So they're quite long races. So you have to refuel. There's a number of pit stops that you're mandated to take by the regulations. And when you're sharing the car with the driver, you then do that. But some people drive on their own, Peter. Some people literally drive on their own. Crazy.
And I've just did a bit of research last night, and this year you're driving a McLaren.
McLaren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like an interesting sort of fast car for you to be driving in.
It's a big step up. I had a round in the Aston Martin that we used to have last year. That was quite an intimidating car, Peter. At 500 horsepower, it was naturally aspirated. It had no silencers, so it was very loud in there. That was one of the best experiences of my life, was driving that car, racing in it, because it was such a cool car to drive. The McLaren is a much more precise car to drive than the Aston. It's very cool. It's a lot easier to get in and out of. It's got gull wing doors, so it's got very low sills, so you can get in very easily. Whereas the Aston, I found super challenging to get in and out of, to be honest with you. I'm glad that I never had to get out of it in a hurry. Whereas the McLaren, I could lift my arse over the sill and just fall out of it, basically. Whereas the Aston Martin, you pretty much had to dive out and hope that the rest of your body followed you, really.
Yeah. And so going on to the presumably water tennis and water racing will be part of your sporting future now. You're going to carry on with both of them.
I'd love to, yeah. That is my plan. I do want to continue on to motorsport. I've got a lot of goals that I'd like to achieve in motorsport. Wheelchair tennis, I need to pull my finger out, to be honest with you, because I miss the competition. I miss the fitness that it gave me, but I also miss the friendships. So I made a lot of friends with people from wheelchair tennis, and I met a lot of really nice people. The social side of that game is more what I miss than the competitive side of it, I suppose. I need to get a new tennis wheelchair because my current wheelchair it's so buggered, you can't even begin. Like the casters are all done. None of the straps are working anymore. They've all snapped. And the chair is just it was never the right size for me. So it's right on the limit of the adjustments that you can make to it. And I've had it adjusted like 3 or 4 times to try and get it to fit for me. So I want to get a Grand Slam. I want to get a titanium wheelchair like what I've got, but they're very expensive. So I keep trying to save up for these things, and then something comes along that I need to spend money on. So I just need to stop making excuses and just get one, because I do need to want to play tennis again. So yeah, wheelchair tennis and the racing, definitely. Even if I only do the tennis for fun.
And they never clash, because I've noticed with my sports that I've done in the past, I've always clashed with something else on a certain weekend or something. So I've always had to go for one way.
Well, that's I think that's where I think I'll do one professionally at a time. You know, with the wheelchair tennis, when I was doing that professionally, that was all I did. And I paid for it all myself. I blew through all of my savings funding the tennis, paying for hotel rooms, paying for tennis courts. I never even considered trying to get sponsorship when I was doing the tennis, which was a big mistake, because I probably could have done, because that would have paid for probably coaching, probably more court time, and I probably would have got better results than what I did, which was definitely a mistake, because I remember the Team GV development squad basically asking for all of the contact details of who the coach was that was coaching me, what level they were and stuff like that. And I was like, guys, I can't afford a coach. And it was only, I think, when I sort of got to the end that I realized that some of the players I was playing against all had coaches, all were funded, and yeah, that's what I would have liked to have done different. I'll tell you one thing I would like to do, Peter. If anyone's listening to this, I would like to start wheelchair tennis in Southampton. So we have wheelchair tennis in Portsmouth, but in Southampton, there aren't really any good indoor courts with the right surface for wheelchair tennis. There are courts indoors that have got AstroTurf, and there are some courts that I've played indoors, but they're unfortunately not in particularly accessible locations. So you couldn't bring someone in a wheelchair in there. The only way I've been able to get in there is I've had to have management meet me by a fire escape and then let me through. And if I was going to maybe try and start a wheelchair tennis program in Southampton, that's just frankly embarrassing. So I know that the council has been or whether they finished it, they're developing the new sports centre up at the top of town. And I swear I saw plans that there was an indoor tennis court there. That is what I would love to do, is start a wheelchair tennis program and maybe do that once a week in the evenings, and go and get some young people, or some old people, or some medium-aged people, and let them share the sport that I love, and get to meet some more people. That's something that I'd probably enjoy doing that more than competing again.
Yeah. And the wheelchair racing, there's no chance of you getting some sort of like Formula One or anything like that?
Never say never, Peter. My goal is to compete in the Le Mans 24-hour. So there have been disabled drivers that have competed in the Le Mans already, who've raced with hand controls. But as far as I know, I don't know if there's been a Briton that's done it. So, but I want to compete in the Spa 24 hours, and I want to compete in the Daytona 24 hours. And those 3 24-hour races are like the holy trinity for endurance racing. And Spa 24 hours is all GT3 cars. Le Mans and Daytona are, well, Daytona's IMSA, so that's American spec Le Mans cars and GT cars. And Le Mans is obviously World Endurance Championship.
So it sounds like after everything you've gone through, with your hip I don't know how you say it.
It's hip dysplasia.
Dysphagia, that's it. And to go through all of that until you get to where you are now, it's just absolutely incredible. And you've got a spell in place now and everything's going up all rosy.
I'm really lucky, Peter.
Yeah.
I feel really lucky to have. Do you know the craziest thing, Peter? I've done more with my life since that day that I thought my life was over than I did before it. Truthfully, and I'm a better person for it. And it humbled me. It made me appreciate life that much more. And I want other people to kind of have that experience in life, because it has put a smile on my face. It's not all sunshine and roses. I still have moments when I'm kind of just a bit, but I think that's just normal for everyone. I think that's normal.
Well, whatever normal is. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's everything. So thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Peter. Thanks for having me on.
Voice. Let's go. Voice FM.